Now, welcome everyone to another Orgone Effects Australia every second Friday afternoon Poets Day webinar. Today's topic is an overrun of the last from 2 weeks ago, which was regarding what was going on energetically on the planet with Mars in retrograde. If we go back to where I left off in the last webinar in Mars in retrograde, I said, yeah, everything was really, really bad energetically on the planet, as in when you have a planet in retrograde, it creates a geomagnetic field effect weakening the Earth's field, which then causes a geoelectric field effect on the Earth's crust. That then creates radiation to come up out of the ground. I've been saying this over and over again, but it needs to be said over and over again because we're virtually the only people in the world who have this knowledge and this understanding, and it really needs to be, absorbed by more and more people so they get a greater understanding. So that radiation charge that comes out of the ground between the 6th and the last webinar, or the night before the last webinar, the charge was coming out of the ground up to 15 meters above the ground. And if you want to compare that to anything as a guide, 5G radiation in street light zones, and that's not 5G from mobile phone towers, only in street light zones, they create radiation that comes up out of the ground roughly to about 1.5 meters. So that Mars retrograde was causing a radiation charge to come up out of the ground to about 15 meters. So which is worse? Everyone's complaining about 5G, and there's some absolute needs to be interested in what's going on there, but it's only in the street light scenario situations. And if you look at 5G and the rollout in Australia, they promised us that they'd have it all done by the end of 2019. And the big assumption was that everywhere we'd go, we'd have 5G in LED streetlights. And that, if you've read and heard what we've said in the past, the radiation charge in the air and what it does to buildings and ley lines and water bodies and energetic buildings is disastrous. That only came out of the ground 1.5 meters. So with this Mars coming out of the ground to 15 meters out of the ground, it's I'd call it, the word I use is diabolical, but it's a naturally occurring event. But in the last webinar I said, the night before everything went back down to zero. And a few people a couple of days later said to me, but I felt something the next day. Well, actually the next day, it went back up to 15 meters out of the ground. That was 2 weeks ago, and it's been up and down like a yo-yo. I'm not, as I keep on saying, I'm not an astrologer, but I occasionally will talk to astrologers who are clients and friends who have good knowledge of what's going on astrologically out there, which would be either making the Mars retrograde radiation charge worse, or it may be working against it to balance it. Well, this morning, the charge coming out of the ground from the Mars retrograde was zero. There was nothing. It was clear energetics everywhere you went. However, about an hour ago, it started to bounce up and down again. We've got this new moon in Aries coming through. And as I said, I'm not an astrologer, so don't hang on to what I say. But that new moon coming up in Aries might be a balancing effect to the Mars retrograde. A lot of people complain around new moons or full moons and things like that they can't sleep at night, but that's only due to the energetic input from other astrological events going on or planetary events going on. It's not a set given thing. One thing's balanced or by the other, or one thing's taken out of balance by the other. It sort of goes like that. So even though we've been up and down the last couple of weeks, and we've had some really bad days, like 2 days ago, the charge wasn't up out of the ground about to the 15 meter mark, but it was up out of the ground about roughly the 8 to 9 meter up above the ground mark. And because of all the other astrological aspects of the Mars in retrograde, there's you could see and feel a lot of really heavy things going on with people. And then even in, and I'm not allowed to talk politics, I shouldn't, but even in world politics, you saw some really weird things going on, like a debate somewhere, which we all know about, which turned into a fist fight almost, which was hilarious. But that was just those poor people being subjected to the bioplasmic charge from the buildings they were in, all those other energetic aspects, plus the Mars retrograde really grinding on people and throwing people into a position where they had to, you talk, you shut up, you talk, you shut up, to, I'm going to talk over the top of you and talk to you, and I'm going to threaten you with this, I'm going to threaten you with that. We won't go any further into what that debate was about, but it's a pretty big one worldwide. And I won't say who we favour, because that, you just got to stay right out of that. I'm an Australian, not an American, but interesting. Okay, last week we had a new blog, which was, we call it here the sports blog, which was written probably where we probably could have maybe thought about it a little bit more, as in, because of the lockdowns here in Victoria, we can't go to a gym or a yoga studio and things like that, but we've got to think beyond that and outside at the bigger picture. And there are other states and countries that are around the world which have their freedoms back. So we thought that, in a sense, it was a good thing being balanced mind. And what we were talking about were, some of the energetic dangers, so to speak, of when you're out either at the football in Queensland, and the bioplasmic charge in the air, which arises from all the strong emotional pain body charge of all the spectators, not so much the players, it's the spectators. And you probably know yourself out there, if you've ever been to even a 12-year-old's footy match, that some parents, not so much the players, some parents get so revved up and fired up about little Johnny out on the playing ground that they get really, really, really nasty and quite almost violent, and their emotional pain body charge just ruins it for everyone. Like, I remember my own son Joshua, when he was playing under 15s footy somewhere at a game somewhere locally. It wasn't a great area, and one of the opposition kids' father started verbally threatening the parents of the opposition to his kids' team parents. And it was so strong and in your face that everyone just immediately just felt sick, because the energy coming from this emotional pain body charge coming from this one person just destroyed it for everyone. And that's what you feel 10 times over if you're sensitive to energy when you go to a stadium where there's a lot of, that team playing that team lost to that team, and that team didn't like that team, and those spectators for the last 80 years have never liked those spectators. And people lose their emotional equanimity, which is the worst thing, most ungodly thing, and they just let it rip, and they don't realise that there's all these people out there going, we should shut up because you just ruined it for everyone. So that's on the bigger picture with a stadium, but then I explained the smaller picture on a 15-year-old football match. If you take it to environments such as fitness studios, gyms and things like that, as I said in the blog, a lot of people go to gyms to let off steam. Like I used to go to the gyms when I was in my 30s and 40s. I'm 56 now. Probably should go, but there's other things I can do now. And I'd get to the gym and there'd be some pretty nasty characters there, and you could tell by the energy they just exuded. And they might have been pumping, pushing tons of weight, and God knows what they were eating, to then interfere with their endocrine organs like the stomach and the pancreas and the liver, to then exacerbate their nasty emotional pain body charge energy, which they thought innocently was, I'm just going to the gym to just let off a bit of steam and pump as many weights as I can and look dirtily at everyone I can, just to make sure I have my own space. Not having a go at gyms and things like that, but you do see that from time to time, and that type of behaviour with that type of energy does create a radiation field, an emotional pain body charge field, which is bioplasmic radiation in the building. And the sensitive ones are going, oh, I think I'll come back at a different time. It's a little bit overwhelming, but it does happen. That's why we, sorry, I'll just get rid of that. That's why things like bands and pendants in gyms, or even taking a stellodome to the gym just to clear the energy, because as those things are coming up from these people, the harmonizers neutralizes that bioplasmic charge as it occurs. So it's less electromagnetic stress on people's meridian systems and organs, but less emotional stress, because people's emotional pain body charge is being dissipated as soon as it occurs. And it does actually work. It does make it a lot more pleasant for people in those environments. Something we didn't talk a lot about, but I was asked to talk a little bit about, were yoga studios. And the yoga studios are great places. They're places where people go to perform yoga, to increase their flexibility, to exercise, and at the end they usually have a meditation. But yoga studios are generally commercial buildings, and like the gyms too, then we can add this to the whole gym thing, and like the stadiums too, we can add that to that. I've been saying for a while, there is a type of radiation called commercial building radiation. And if you want to compare that to 5G, well, it's as bad, if not worse. Some of it can come from, and I'll give you a really good example of a shopping centre we went to last Sunday, and I won't mention the name, but they are notorious for having fluorescent lighting hanging down quite low. And if you've heard me talk about fluorescent lighting in the past, where a fluorescent light sheds light, it sheds radiation. And being a commercial building, and you've got the emotional pain body charge, and you've also got all the outgassing from all the packaging and all the different plastics and rubbers and things like that. Shopping centres, and this one particular type with the low slung fluoros, you walk in and it's like, whoa, boy. We did a little experiment last Sunday with our new Stellar pendant in this particular shopping centre or big supermarket. And without blowing our trumpet too hard, but the Stellar pendant did have a neutralising effect of the charge in the building over the whole, whatever brand name supermarket it was. We were quite surprised, because a pendant's not supposed to do that. And we're not making a claim about that either, because I see other people say, oh, we can do something over 40 square metres, and I test it, there's nothing's going on anyway. I don't want to get into battles over who's got the biggest area that neutralises the charge and how what. However, the Stellar pendant, even though it did have that effect over the whole supermarket, it wasn't as good as having the Stellar dome in your bag or in your pocket or anything like that. But that was a really interesting observation to make with the Stellar pendant. So if you're going to a gym or somewhere, any type of commercial building, if you don't have heavy duty protection on you, just your little pendant, that little yellow pendant has, from our test last week, and we did some more little testing during the week at other big shops which are allowed to open at the moment, they all come under the commercial building radiation type of thing. It worked quite well, but not as well as a Stellar dome, but it was probably about a 7 out of 10, which we were really, really pleased about. The yoga mat patch, the whole idea of that, I'm sorry if I'm jumping around from one subject to the other. As I said, with his rheumatoid arthritis and a couple of painkillers, it's like, whew, by the end of the day, I'm doing as well as I can. The other benefit of the yoga mat patch is that a lot of yoga mats are made from not so nice rubbers. They outgas, or if they do outgas, they don't have a good charge. Rubber, like steel, is one of those things that has a positive charge. And so when you're touching, if you're doing yoga or any type of exercise on a rubber surface, especially go back to the gyms again, they use that cryogenic rubber matting, which is crushed and frozen rubber, frozen then crushed rubber into little granules, which is then bound together in a urethane resin to set as to make a nice thick 50 mil soft landing protective mat. Those black rubber mats outgas like crazy and have a terrible energy, just to talk about rubbers in a sense. But yoga mats, because of the rubbers they use, aren't that great. They have a positive charge, and you're touching them all the time, and your nerve endings and your meridians are not being promoted in any way energetically by touching that type of surface. So having the yoga mat patch on the yoga mat creates a situation that the yoga mat takes on a negative charge. And the whole idea of that is that the negative charge is supportive to the meridian system, it's supportive to the nervous system. So if you're touching and pushing or whatever and stretching whatever you're doing, your body's physicality as far as energetics is not being hindered, it's actually being helped. And as I said, at the end of a lot of yoga classes, I like to finish off with a meditation, and having the yoga mat with the patch on it, that stops, as the Indian yogis say, it stops the earth currents dragging your energy into the ground, because you want your energy to go to the fontanelle in the ground. You want that energy up there. You don't want it being dragged down, because if it's being dragged down, you're not going to get the energetic and spiritually and emotionally balancing aspect of meditation. So the yoga mat patch on the yoga mat allows that. Up until, I think it was about a year or so, a year ago or a couple of years ago, we did have a sheet called the Cavalia sheet, which was a cotton polyester satin, because silk wouldn't really cut it and wouldn't last for this sort of job, meditation sheet. That we took them off the market because they really didn't sell, because we're not really the people, because we sell EMF harmonizers, is we're not really the right people who're selling things for yoga, even though we've got the mat patch. But the meditation sheets did the same thing. We loved them, and we still do love them. I'm getting pressure from the side to bring the Cavalia sheets back in the gold, the orange, like the yogis, and the purple. And they may reappear back on the website soon. It's just a matter of logistics to get things made, because we're in, I will call it Victoria, there has been restrictions on industry and transport and everything, and it's made things a little bit difficult and a little bit tricky when you're having to rely on getting couriers to deliver the next day, which might take 5 days later, or production companies to get into production to produce something for us, which we then energize. But the parole production companies being busted down from 20 employees to 2. Thank God that stopped. And I don't want to get political again, but hopefully we can move on from there and get some more products up onto the website, which is something that we're really keen to do. We don't stop. Because of COVID, we haven't done any expos this year after COVID, and it's given us a lot more time to think, work with our marketers, do more work with our customers with one-on-one Google Earth readings via the contact form on our webpage. And that has really increased over the COVID period, because people are sitting at home and they're really tuning into their home environment and thinking there's something not quite right here. I didn't notice that in the past, but geez, I really notice it now. So because they know that we can't go from out of 5 kilometres in our own area, people are using that facility of emailing me, can you do a Google Earth reading? And because we're not running around like headless chooks doing other things because we can't go anywhere, it's allowed us to get more and more Google Earth readings done to help people. And the Google Earth readings at the moment are free, and it's good value. The building biology knowledge I have isn't just around smart meters and Wi-Fi and electrical systems. Like, it's electrical systems in reality in a household these days, with a house built in the last 30 to 40 years, isn't really a big danger except for your meter box or smart meter. And if you're in Victoria, and I've said this in the past, it's been a terrible habit by construction companies in the past to put meter boxes, electrical meter boxes, against the master bedroom bedhead wall, which means that radiation charge from the meter box goes through the wall into the bedroom up to about 2 meters into the bedroom. But because the bedroom is a resonant cavity, it amplifies the smart meter electrical meter box radiation beyond 2 meters in the actual bedroom itself. But GeoCleanse and Stelladome neutralise that. Thank God for that. Something else I've been asked to talk about is, and go over, because we've spoken about this in the past, is because people are not, and we've really noticed that lately with COVID, is that the amount of people walking up and down the street, because the government said you've only got an hour to go and do your exercise, and you can't go to the gym, you can't go to here, you can't go there, you can't do outdoor training, you can't, you know, back in the beginning, we couldn't even go on the water, but that's fixed now, was to go walking or running or bike riding and get that fit, I won't say fit, whatever, I'll say personal tracker out, because there's different brands out there, and wearing a personal tracker without a harmonizer on it is not a good thing, because, you know, personal tracker, and here's one I actually bought last week on the internet, but I won't say the brand. I went to charge it, it won't charge. Anyway, not that I use them, but I buy things like that to test all the time, because we don't know, you know, what one manufacturer is doing compared to another. And we buy the different brands to test, and what I can say from the testing is that they all do the same thing. There's not one worse than the other. Although amateurs who might want to use radio frequency meters to measure EMF, which doesn't really measure EMF properly, might go, oh, that brand's worse than the other. But what we're looking at is a charge field, and radio frequency meters don't show charge fields. And I've been saying that forever and a day, and I'll keep on saying that, because I smell a rat with the radio frequency meter industry. So that's why we brought in the personal watch, we call them the watch harmonizer, which is, there's one on the back of the watch, which were okay designed for watches, but they're also really designed for personal trackers. And I produced the watch harmonizer before the release of the Apple Watch and the Samsung Watch, but they actually sat on the shelf for a while, because they released them, they said they were going to be released on an X date, but they didn't release them that date. There was a delay. But in the meantime, what became really popular was our personal tracker. Personal trackers seem EMF stress in the body, because you're wearing on the wrist. There are so many meridians and energy channels through the wrist, that what it basically does is it blocks the central meridian, and can also have a huge effect. And I see this all the time. Well, I used to see this all the time when we tested people at expos, but we got enough testing done to be able to really say, yes, what we did see all the time, which with any watch, especially personal tracker, is not only did it block the central meridian, it also had a huge effect on the thyroid. It basically took out the thyroid energetics, which is also the throat chakra, which is one of the higher nerve centers, nerve plexuses of our energy system, which is vital that it's kept clear for us to be able to actually function properly. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? There's not a huge amount of people here, because I've realised that a lot of people have realised that you don't have to actually turn up at 4:30 every second Friday afternoon, that these webinars go edited, because I might say something wrong, or I might stumble or whatever, and put up on the website. So something else, our Stellar Dome Gold limited edition is almost coming to an end. These sold extremely well. We don't know whether we might do another 1,000, but we won't call them limited edition. We'll just go back to the standard Stellar Dome reflector on the bottom. But these have been extremely good, well sold, because of us saying at the bottom that they are a limited edition, and they worked as well as the green domes. Some people claim that they work better than the green domes, but from the testing we did in the end, they were pretty much the same. But it was one of those things that everyone was just really attracted to. Well, everyone likes the colour gold, don't they? So that there may be, and I was discussing that with someone important within the company this afternoon, where they were saying, why don't we do another 1,000 and offer green and gold in the future? You know, like, there's no difference between the two of them, but some people, because the Stellar Dome is something that you'd put out on a table for it to be effective, they might want it to be a little bit more colour coordinated to their environment. However, I'm not going to go out and do 1,000,001 colours. We've done that with the old Space Clearing Dome in the past, and it does become problematic, because you might get a run on a particular colour, and then all of a sudden it drops out and someone else wants another colour, and you've got to rush into production. As a producer of harmonizers, you've got to be mindful of who wants what, who's happy with what colour or what size or what shape or whatever. Mind you, the change from the coloured or personal pendants to the stellar pendant gold was for a reason, because it was so much more powerful. We got a new infusion system, and we thought it was a colour yellow, but it was our new infusion system, but we like to run with the colour yellow anyway. The colour yellow or the stellar pendant is actually a legitimate reason to change to it, because it was so much more powerful than the coloured range. Also, it took the drama away of actually, people emailing me photos or texting me photos of family members and trying to work out which coloured pendant suited individuals. And then you had problems where people were going, oh no, my favourite colour is purple, and I intuitively was saying, no, your colour to give you the best EMF protection, to boost your biofield, to increase the energetics of your weaker meridian, which is making you susceptible to EMF stress, was a different to colour than what the personal choice was. Okay, we've got a question. I'll be finishing soon. Would a watch harmonizer on your exercise tracker enough to protect you for when you're going outside, or should you have something else too? Before the stellar pendant, the watch harmonizer was fine. We did lots of testing at expos where people put a watch harmonizer on their watch or their tracker, and it gave them the same type of energetic protection of wearing one of the coloured pendants. The same went with the inner band. But now that we don't have the coloured pendants and we've got the stellar pendant, the stellar pendant would be a better option as far as better EMF protection by the fact that it clears a larger field around you than the watch harmonizer. But I always still say, if you're wearing a watch or an electronic watch or a GPS watch or any of those types of things, because it's touching the skin, you want to change that backing of the whatever you're wearing from a positive charge to negative charge, so it isn't working the other way through. So that's the end of our webinar today. Sorry it's only half an hour, but being full of painkillers from having rheumatoid arthritis, which only came up over the last couple of days, just sort of wear me out a little bit. We'll have another webinar in the next 2 weeks' time. There's a number of different topics we want to cover, and we still will be in Mars retrograde. So I'll go back over that again and give an update on where we have been from, so tonight until the next couple of weeks, and we'll talk about some other interesting things. If anyone has any questions that they'd like for me to raise through the next couple of weeks, just send me an email. There's a contact form on the website where you can just say, can you clarify this, or can you answer that, or it'd be good to talk about this or that. Like, we've got our own ideas, but we love to listen to other people's ideas and experiences and things like that. Maybe, some of you got some really interesting ghosty stories that they might want to share. Like we spoke about 3 or 4 webinars ago, and then I've got some more interesting ghosty stories to add to that at a later date. So if you've got any questions, shoot them through to me over the next couple of weeks, and we'll meet again in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for attending.